What will STEM education look like in 2050? Will we be teaching quantum computing to primary students or preparing learners for interplanetary challenges? Today, Alex Moore from STEM Learning helps us look into the future of STEM. Welcome to another mini podcast ahead of the STEM Learning Conference in Dubai. I'm your host, Alex Gray, and today we're exploring how educators can prepare for a world where STEM evolves faster than ever. Alex, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Nice winter break here. Dubai sunshine's absolutely glorious. You'll be able to experience this yourself in a couple of months, won't you?
Yeah, I'll be over with the team, Sarah, Michael, Mark, and Lord Jim Knight on the 22nd of February to do the STEM Learning Conference. So really looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Fantastic. So what would be, just for those people listening who maybe are learning about this, give us like your 45-second elevator pitch about what this is and why it's going to be important for educators out there.
Okay, so this is STEM for All. It's a conference running by STEM Learning, who are a UK-based organisation that are in every primary and secondary school in the UK that's state-funded. We're really excited to come out. This is our first conference in Dubai, it's being held at GEMS Winchester, Dubai, with the team there. So really excited to host it there. And it's going to consist of 3 keynote sessions from Lord Jim is going to be one of the keynotes. The other 2 we're going to announce very shortly. And a series of workshops in the afternoon that are really going to drill down into those STEM subjects, including AI. So there's going to be a focus on artificial intelligence, really sort of innovating at the cutting edge of that, and science, technology, and engineering, art and maths with the team that are coming from the UK. And we're also recruiting some people to run workshops locally as well. So if you've got interest in those fields, you can apply to speak at the conference too.
Amazing. We will link because I'm sure you've got a form or some form of application process, which we can link in the description below. And the purpose of these is we're giving everyone a taste, as it were, just that little bit of something to get them excited for what's going to be coming in a couple of months. And today's short mini podcast is about future-proofing education. So obviously that introduction there, we've talked about what is STEM, what is it going to look like in this field, the future to come, as it were. And STEM is evolving rapidly. So what are some cutting-edge fields like quantum computing or bioengineering that educators should start preparing their students for today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we should start talking to our kids and asking them what they think these fields will be. It's fascinating what they come up with. Obviously, they can't escape artificial intelligence at the moment. It's everywhere. But I think more generally, what I try to do here is pull from the McKinley technology trends, which forecasts for 2030 and beyond what might be the big movers and shakers in terms of jobs. So what jobs might exist in 10, 20 years that don't exist? So if we use that as our kind of lens, the big 6 that they came up with that they feel are going to be prevalent is automation and AI, so artificial intelligence and how that's going to be a part of our children's future. Data analytics and big data, which is kind of linked to that first point, but it's a slightly different beast that sits off to the side. Cybersecurity is going to be absolutely huge, which is really interesting because as we become more digital as a species, we're going to have to think about hacks and how we can keep our data safe. So we're finding we're teaching that more lower down the schools in the UK as well to kids. Internet of Things, which is the IoT, sustainable technologies, and I'll come back to that in a minute in terms of my sort of STEM hat there and what I think about that. But also this whole movement towards health technology. So you've probably seen the Zoe bits that go in the back of your arm, Apple Watches, wearable technology is going to be huge in the next decade. They reckon this is going to be the next big kind of consumer product that's going to drive in the STEM fields. But kind of mapping back to STEM, where do we think this is an organization? So we think obviously investing a lot. We work with a huge network of STEM ambassadors who are adults who work in engineering companies, science fields, all across the UK. And these people are PhDs, they're experts in their field. And what they're kind of telling us is that sustainable energy, renewable energy is obviously huge. And we're taking big leaps into that at the moment. So green, sustainable energy. How do we get our children learning about that? And how do we get our children understanding that so they can have the skills to be able to hit that job market in the future? We've obviously got decarbonization. Going back to our wicked problems, climate change is one that we are not really shifting at the moment. So how can we teach children about decarbonization, which is at the moment doesn't really sit anywhere within mathematics. It's kind of a bit of an abstract concept. And it's quite difficult to work out, how much carbon does a person create? How can you sequester that? So that kind of mathematical, sciencey bit, I think we really need to start honing in on. And then obviously we're chatting to all the STEM organizations in the UK. They're not talking about cobalt and electric cars. They're talking about hydrogen. They're talking about hydrogen planes, hydrogen being the future transport fuel for us as a species by 2050 to 2070. So, well, what do children need to learn about that? What do they need to understand about hydrogen? Do they need to understand the dangers of it, the possibilities of it? So I think when you stitch those things together, there's 9 elements there. It's quite a lot, but it's gives you a picture of where we think the future is going to be.
Lots of exciting things there, lots of exciting things for learning. And on the other side of that is we've got teaching. So how can CPD help teachers start to integrate these advanced concepts into their classrooms?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of our CPD is digital. We do a lot remote. We do a lot face-to-face. And we have these conversations with experts, either that are in teaching themselves, they're working at MATS, which is a multi-academy trust, or they're within the organisation. And STEM Learning as an organisation have the best. And I'm a consultant, so I work for them, but also with them. So I see it from both sides. And what I guess is one of their greatest strengths is the quality of the people that are writing these courses for CPD really are the best that's out there. So what the teachers are getting is they're getting cutting edge ideas in terms of the pedagogy, the soundness of the pedagogy. It's mapped and aligned to curriculum content and implementation. So it's sound in terms of being able to pick it up and go with it. But it also walks that beautiful immersive wire between technology being used when it needs to be used, but then good old fashioned knowledge resources as well. So it's got that balance. So if you come on a STEM learning course, you'll get both. And the things that we're trying to tackle are some of the things we've spoken about. So this interdisciplinary lens that STEM offers, where other subjects on their own don't necessarily have that. So for me, it's 3 things. It comes down to digital literacy, helping the children become more digitally literate as these things that we've just discussed become more prevalent. They have to be. There's no 2 ways around that. It's critical thinking. I think increasingly this is something we keep coming back to. So how can we teach our children to think critically? The oracy we spoke about in our other episode is really useful for that, because you get them to walk and talk through their kind of thought process, and you can challenge them and, well, why do you think that? And say it again better, and those types of mechanisms. But the third thing is problem solving. So those wicked problems, how can we teach our kids to kind of look at the root of the problem and work out what the solution is going to be? So I think those 3 things, digital literacy, critical thinking, and problem solving, is what we're working on with our kids, and our offer kind of underpins that.
So within that, you've mentioned obviously 2 skills, and interdisciplinary comes out, and most schools around the world have an element of that built into their key values and their curriculums, whether it's 4 C's, 6 C's. We're talking about IB and learner profiles. But I'm interested from your perspective, like, are there any skills that you're seeing out there that no matter how fast STEM evolves, those skills are always going to be key and important no matter where we are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the critical thinking one, I think, is key. It's just, I can't get away from how important that is, more now than ever before. I think it's really important that we do everything we can as educators and as humans to empower our kids to think critically, because they don't have as much agency as I'd like them to have in the classroom environment, because there's pressures, external exams, there's curriculum to get through. So it means that when we do have them, we've really got to prioritize what we're doing with them in the classroom. And it's having that confidence as a teacher to just step back for a moment and say, let's see where this 10 minutes goes. I'll give you an example. We were talking about AI, funnily enough, this morning in a year 7 computing lesson. One of the kids had heard this thing called the paperclip maximizer, which, for those listening who don't know what it is, it's how AI would just perform a task and it would do everything it can to make as many paperclips if you told it to do that, which includes getting rid of humans. It's quite a scary theory thought up by Nick Bostrom. This kid didn't understand it, but thought it was pretty cool. And they wanted to talk about it. And I was talking about sort of Bayesian networks. And it was, well, how can we make these 2 things relevant? And it was that critical thinking, sort of going back to him, saying, well, what do you think it is? What is a paperclip? Well, it's a metal piece of thing that we use to hold paper together. Yeah, of course it is. So what's a maximizer? I don't know. Well, what do you think it means? Think of it critically. What could a maximizer mean? And they all wrote down loads of definitions. And in the end, they got there. And it's being able to kind of peel through those onion layers and get to the core of what kids don't understand, and then give them the confidence and skills to be able to teach that part, I think.
And that's a really hard thing to do, because you've mentioned it already in terms of curriculum time. And I'm a big advocate for my bringing about proper preparation and planning prevents poor performance. It's very drilled into as we were younger, but it just shows the things you're talking about there are only going to be effective if teachers are given time to plan and embed into a curriculum. I think probably vertically and even horizontally when we talk about interdisciplinary, but that really just boils down to proper preparation and planning. Because it's not just like I could turn up to a lesson tomorrow and be like, hey, I could build that straight in. No matter how good an educator you are, like that's a challenge, and it needs to be ingrained. It needs to be embedded properly, I think, for children to be given the opportunities to develop those skills.
Yeah, for sure.
And talking about sort of skill development and opportunities to do that, obviously what you've mentioned there is critical thinking, and we know that's a key thing. But one of the things that we're seeing probably even as equally as important as we come into this now, creativity, or as some people might like to call it, imagination. How do you think we can go about nurturing teachers to be able to actually develop those skills within students in their classroom?
Yeah, that is like the $1 million question that I've been trying to solve for about 22 years. It's not easy. It's not easy. It comes with confidence for the teacher, and it comes with having a degree of creative freedom to be agile within the box, I would say. So when I refer to the box in education, I talk about the curriculum. We're an outcome-led profession, as they are at university. We need to get the kids towards an outcome. We can't get away from that. That's our responsibility to an extent. But it's how agile, how much freedom can we have within that? So it's a really difficult question to answer on a podcast, I suppose. But I think just so the CPD courses we run at STEM Learning bring communities of teachers together. So if we take primary school teachers as a demographic, they are on the whole more creative. As one of my roles, I get to go into a lot of primary classrooms. I'm always blown away by how much time they spend on creativity. And then as we get through the sector and we get towards that kind of 16, we kind of crush it out of the kids a little bit, because it's like Sir Ken said, we're kind of working them towards an endpoint, and it's really sad. But at the same time, I'm seeing a bit more of a revival into creativity. So I'm seeing drama through science, for example. I've seen that recently, and I've seen mathematics in my future classroom, which is a really creative learning space with no desks, where the kids are sort of using augmented reality and interacting with it, taking selfies, and then overlaying podcasts using AI on the top of it. So I think it's a really interesting time in our sort of evolution, because we've got this new technology, AI, coming in. We're starting to use voices. We're starting to use videos, which is essentially creativity. And if you play the kids a podcast on Notebook LM about a really boring document, so let's say in science, decision trees, in computing, that's not a particularly interesting topic. You can put a really cool PDF into something called Notebook LM, and then play the kids the recording. I'm not advocating they have their own account, because they can't till they're 18, but you can play it to them with 2 American podcast voices speaking about it. The next kind of step up from that would be for them to create their own podcast, where they write the script, they write the questions, and they kind of interview an imaginary guest. What's happening here is really rich learning, because they're engaging with the knowledge, they're creating their own questions about the knowledge, and they're almost coming out of a script. So that's kind of an example of where I think creativity can really reinforce learning. And there's a bit of a stigma around creativity, that it's messy and it's chaotic and it's out of control. And when you walk in, it just looks like everyone's doing their own thing. And it's a bit of a stigma that we need to break away from. And I think the way to do that is just through really high quality CPD, and to network with other teachers that are doing it, to have that confidence that you're kind of in this together. It's not just you as this disruptive innovator doing your own thing in the classroom in your school.
And it's a hard one. You mentioned it at the start when you were answering the question. I think if you put 10 educators together and gave them the question of what is creativity, you would get 10 different answers. And in some ways that's wonderful, but it also highlights the challenges and difficulty we have if we can't ourselves even kind of come up with something. How do we go about then developing that in students? It's a longer, I think it's a much longer answer than we have for this, but it's something great to think about as we move forward. And as we kind of bring this short one to a close, you've mentioned some of these things already, but I'm really interested in terms of radical shifts. Like you've mentioned lots of different things already. I want to try and nail down to one. But if you could envision one radical shift in STEM in the next 25 years, what do you think it would be, and how should we start preparing for it today?
Yeah, another good question. I think I would love personally to see a real movement towards interdisciplinary thinking. I just think the children of the future, whether that's tomorrow, next year, or 10 years, are going to need to be really agile to solve these problems. And I think STEM is really well positioned there because of the overlap between the disciplines. If we add art into that as well, we've got 5 key subject silos there that, when combined, are a force of nature, really. And I think that's the package that has the potential to kind of help our students solve really complex problems. And in every country, every demographic has its own. We're looking at decarbonization in one conversation, then we're looking at climate change and increasing temperatures. Well, what does that do? It displaces people. They then become refugees and they need to find somewhere else to live. All of those aspects of that single problem have variables that kids are going to need to be adaptive in the future to solve. And I think interdisciplinary learning would be my answer to that. How you do that is really difficult. We've had a few conversations about that. Brave teachers could try to bring maths into their lesson. I'm sure a lot of science teachers already do that. Some brave maths teachers might bring some art into their lessons. And this is happening. What I think we need to do is just really champion those people that are doing that and show other people how it's possible without diminishing the outcomes of the learning or without deviating too far from your curriculum intent document. So it's having that confidence to kind of balance up the practical like we've spoken about with the virtual, but interdisciplinary, I think, is the way that we're going to achieve that. I don't have a roadmap for exactly how we're going to do it, but I think if I had to take a bet, that's where I would see education going in the next 10 years, particularly with technologies like artificial intelligence taking some of the teacher workload away from them.
Wonderful. Again, fantastic food for thought for the next 25 years for those educators starting their journey, and for some of us that might still be there in 25 years' time. We'll see. But for now, Alex, thank you ever so much for painting a fascinating picture of STEM's future. And for those of you who don't miss Alex's talk at the STEM Learning Conference in Dubai this February.